The little girl had been standing silently in the hallway for almost a minute when she finally pointed at the photograph. "Why do you have a picture of my brother?" The room went completely still. Victor Romano, a man whose name could make grown men lower their voices, turned slowly toward the 3-year-old. She was holding a stuffed rabbit under one arm and staring at the framed photograph hanging above the fireplace. Victor followed her finger. The photograph showed a boy of 4 years old. Dark brown hair, gray-green eyes, a tiny scar near his left eyebrow, and around his wrist, almost hidden beneath the sleeve of his blue sweater, was a narrow silver bracelet. Victor had looked at that photograph every morning for 7 years. His son, Daniel Romano, missing since the age of 4. Declared dead by everyone except his father. Victor's face lost every trace of color. The little girl tilted her head. "That's my brother," she repeated. "His name is Eli." Victor stared at her. "What did you say?" "Eli." She pointed at the photograph again. "But he doesn't look like that anymore. He's bigger now." Victor could not move. For 7 years, he had searched hospitals, orphanages, police records, private clinics, abandoned buildings, foreign ports, and every criminal organization that might have known something about the disappearance of his son. 7 years. And now a maid's toddler was standing in his hallway telling him that the dead child in his photograph was alive. Victor slowly lowered himself into the nearest chair. "What does your brother look like now?" The little girl smiled. "He has brown hair. And he doesn't like carrots." Victor almost laughed. Almost. Then she added something that made his blood turn cold. "He wears the silver bracelet all the time." Victor looked back at the photograph. His son's bracelet had been engraved by his mother 3 days before the boy disappeared. Only 2 people knew what was engraved inside it. Victor. And Daniel's mother. His dead wife. "Where is your brother?" Victor whispered. The little girl pointed toward the kitchen. "Outside." Victor stood so quickly that the chair scraped violently against the marble floor. And for the first time in 7 years, the most feared man in the city was afraid of what he might find. 7 years earlier, Victor Romano had believed he had everything. Money, power, a wife he adored, and a 4-year-old son who followed him everywhere. Daniel had been the kind of child who asked too many questions. Why was the moon following the car? Why did Papa always wear black? Why couldn't he have a dog? Why did Mama cry when she thought nobody was watching? Victor remembered every question. He remembered the way Daniel used to climb into his lap during breakfast. He remembered the boy's habit of stealing olives from his mother's plate. He remembered the tiny hand that always wrapped around his index finger whenever they crossed a street. Then came the morning that destroyed everything. Victor had been scheduled to drive his wife, Isabella, and Daniel to a private school appointment. At the last moment, a business emergency changed his plans. He sent his wife and son with their usual driver. 23 minutes later, the car was found burning beside an abandoned road. The driver was dead. Isabella was dead. Daniel was gone. There was no body, no blood trail, no ransom demand. Nothing. The police assumed the boy had been killed. Victor refused to believe them. For 7 years, he searched. He became colder, harder, more ruthless. He stopped celebrating birthdays. He stopped visiting the beach where Isabella used to take Daniel. He kept Daniel's bedroom exactly as it had been. The dinosaur sheets, the wooden train, the tiny red shoes beside the closet. Every year, on Daniel's birthday, Victor sat alone in that room. And every year, he told himself the same thing. My son is still somewhere. His men eventually stopped correcting him. They knew better. Victor Romano did not accept impossible answers. The woman who worked as a maid in Victor's house was named Clara Bennett. She was 28 years old, widowed, and raising her 3-year-old daughter, Lily, alone. Clara had been working at the Romano estate for 8 months. She kept her head down. She did her work. She never asked questions. She never entered rooms she wasn't supposed to enter. And she certainly never allowed Lily to wander through the house. But that morning, the daycare had closed unexpectedly. Clara had no one to watch her daughter. So she had brought Lily with her. It was supposed to be temporary. One morning. One mistake. She never imagined that mistake would uncover a secret buried for 7 years. When Clara came rushing into the hallway, she found Victor sitting in the chair with Lily beside him. Her heart nearly stopped. "Mr. Romano." She hurried forward. "I'm so sorry. She must have slipped away while I was." Victor raised one hand. Clara stopped. "Where's your son?" Clara blinked. "My son? Your daughter said her brother is alive." Clara looked at Lily, then at Victor. "I don't have a son." Victor's expression changed. "Don't lie to me." Clara's face went white. "I swear I'm not lying." Victor leaned forward. "What is the boy's name?" Clara hesitated. Then Lily answered for her. "Eli." Victor's eyes hardened. "Bring him to me." Clara looked terrified. "Mr. Romano, please. Bring him here." She swallowed, then slowly nodded. 5 minutes later, Clara walked through the side door with a 10-year-old boy beside her. Victor saw him and forgot how to breathe. The boy stopped. He looked at Victor. Victor looked at him. 7 years disappeared in a single second. The shape of the face, the gray-green eyes, the small scar above the eyebrow, and on his left wrist, the silver bracelet. Victor's hand began to shake. The boy noticed. "Are you okay, sir?" Victor couldn't answer, because the child had Isabella's eyes. But there was something else. Something Victor had never expected. The boy was smiling at him. Not fearfully. Not suspiciously. Almost comfortably. As though somewhere deep inside him, he already knew this man. Victor whispered the name he had not spoken aloud in years. "Daniel." The boy frowned. "My name is Eli." Victor closed his eyes. And suddenly he understood. The photograph had not been a coincidence. The bracelet had not been a coincidence. The boy standing before him was his son. But if Daniel was alive, someone had lied to Victor for 7 years. And someone had worked very hard to make sure he never found him. Victor did not reveal the truth. Not yet. He sent Clara and the children home. Then he locked himself inside his study. His right-hand man, Marcus Hale, entered 10 minutes later. Marcus had been with Victor for 20 years. He had seen Victor furious. He had seen him violent. He had seen him grieving. But he had never seen him like this. What happened? Victor placed the old photograph on the desk. Marcus stared at it. Then at Victor. "Is that?" "Yes." Marcus went completely still. "Daniel?" Victor nodded. "Alive." Marcus sat down. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Then Victor said something Marcus had never expected to hear. "I need you to investigate Clara Bennett." Marcus frowned. "The maid? Everything. Do you suspect her?" "No." Victor looked toward the window. "I suspect everyone." That was the beginning. By midnight, Marcus had discovered that Clara had no criminal record. No suspicious bank transfers. No unexplained wealth. No connection to Victor's enemies. She had lived quietly for years. Her husband had died when Lily was still a baby. She had worked 3 jobs to survive. There was nothing. Nothing except one detail. Her son, Eli, had no official birth certificate. Marcus stared at the file. "That isn't possible." Victor looked at him. "Explain." "The boy exists. School records exist. Medical records exist. But his original identity was never registered." Victor's jaw tightened. "Who registered him?" "No one." "Then how did he get into the school system?" Marcus hesitated. "Someone created the records 7 years ago." Victor looked at the clock. "Who?" "We're still tracing it." Victor stood. "Find them." The next morning, Victor went to Clara's apartment. He didn't arrive in a convoy. He didn't bring guards. He came alone. Clara opened the door and nearly dropped the laundry basket in her hands. Mr. Romano? Victor looked past her. Eli was sitting at the kitchen table helping Lily color a picture. The boy looked up. Hi. Victor's heart twisted. Hi. He had no idea how to speak to his own son. So he sat across from him. What are you drawing? A house. Whose house? Eli shrugged. I don't know yet. Victor smiled faintly. What would you put in it? A big tree. Anything else? A dog. Do you have a dog? No. Why not? Mom says we can't afford one. Victor looked at Clara. She immediately shook her head. You don't have to. I wasn't offering. It was a lie. He was already planning to buy the boy a dog. But he needed to be careful. Dr. Helen Carter, the private neurologist Victor trusted, had warned him not to force Daniel's memories. A severe childhood trauma could cause memory fragmentation. If Victor suddenly told the boy who he really was, he could destroy the fragile identity he had built. So Victor made a decision. He would become a stranger. A safe stranger. And he would wait. Over the next several weeks, Victor found reasons to visit. He brought Lily storybooks. He brought Clara groceries. He brought Eli a chess set. The boy became fascinated with the game. One afternoon, Victor showed him a particular opening. Eli stared at the board, then moved 3 pieces in an unusual sequence. Victor froze. Who taught you that? Eli shrugged. I don't know. Victor's voice became quiet. That was something your father used to teach you. Eli looked at him. You knew my father? Victor's heart stopped. Yes. Was he nice? Victor looked down. He loved you very much. Eli studied his face. Did he leave? No. Victor swallowed. He never stopped looking for you. The boy didn't understand. But something in his expression changed. Meanwhile, someone else was watching. Clara noticed the black car parked across the street. She noticed it again the next day. And the day after that. At first, she assumed Victor was keeping an eye on her. Then one evening, she saw another vehicle. A gray sedan. It followed her home. Clara locked the door. She pulled the curtain shut. And for the first time in years, she felt afraid. Not for herself. For Eli. She had promised herself she would never tell anyone what happened 7 years ago. Because she had made a promise to a dying woman. But now that promise was becoming impossible to keep. That night, Clara finally told Victor the truth. She called him after midnight. I need to see you. Victor arrived within 15 minutes. They met in the empty church parking lot 2 blocks from her apartment. Clara looked exhausted. You were right. Victor said nothing. Eli isn't my biological son. I know. Clara looked shocked. How? The medical records. She nodded slowly. I found him 7 years ago. Victor's entire body went still. Where? In a forest. His jaw tightened. Tell me everything. Clara looked toward the dark road. I was walking home after work. I heard a child crying. Victor closed his eyes. I found him beneath a tree. What was he wearing? A white shirt. Brown pants. There was blood on his forehead. Was anyone with him? No. Did he say anything? Clara shook her head. He was unconscious. Victor whispered. Did you call the police? Yes. Then why didn't they find him? Clara looked at him. They did. Victor stared. What? The police came to the clinic. Which clinic? St. Mary's. Victor's face hardened. That hospital shut down 6 years ago. I know. Who treated him? Dr. Samuel Reed. Victor's expression changed. Dr. Samuel Reed had been the physician assigned to the Romano family after the crash. He had told Victor that Daniel had almost certainly died. Victor had trusted him. For 7 years. He suddenly understood the size of the betrayal. Where is Dr. Reed now? Clara looked frightened. I don't know. Victor took out his phone. Marcus. The call connected immediately. Find Samuel Reed. Dr. Reed was gone. His office had closed. His house had been sold. His bank accounts had been emptied. But Marcus found something else. A storage unit. Inside it was a box. Inside the box was a hospital bracelet, a photograph, and an envelope. Victor opened the envelope himself. There was only one sentence. The boy survived. Do not let Victor find him. Asterisk, asterisk. Victor stared at the words. Then he noticed the signature. Evelyn Shaw, his wife's personal assistant, dead 2 years earlier. Victor's stomach dropped. Because Evelyn had been one of the last people to speak to Isabella before the crash. And she had been the one who told Victor that Daniel was dead. The investigation widened. Victor discovered that Evelyn had been secretly transferring money into an account belonging to a man named Thomas Vale. Thomas Vale had worked for Victor's organization. He had disappeared 6 months after the crash. And there was one more connection. Thomas had been seen meeting with Victor's older brother, Adrian. Victor had not spoken to Adrian in 5 years. The brothers had fought after their father's death. Adrian believed Victor had stolen control of the family. Victor believed Adrian had betrayed him. Now Victor wondered if the feud had been staged. He summoned Adrian. Adrian arrived furious. You accuse me of kidnapping your son? Victor placed the photograph on the table. Tell me why your name appears in Evelyn's financial records. Adrian looked at the photograph. Then he looked away. Victor saw it. Fear. Not anger. Fear. You know something. Adrian remained silent. Victor stood. 7 years ago, my wife and son were attacked. I know. My wife died. I know. My son disappeared. Adrian's eyes filled with tears. I know. Then tell me what happened. Adrian whispered. Your wife discovered who was stealing from the family. Victor froze. Who? Adrian looked at him. Your own security chief. The security chief was Michael Grant. He had worked for Victor for 14 years. He had been present the morning of the crash. He had helped identify the bodies. He had searched the wreckage. And he had repeatedly told Victor there was no chance Daniel survived. Victor confronted him that night. Michael didn't deny it. He simply smiled. You finally figured it out. Victor's guards raised their weapons. Victor lifted his hand. Why? Michael shrugged. Money. You killed my wife. No. Michael's smile disappeared. I didn't kill Isabella. Then who did? Michael said nothing. Victor stepped closer. Who? Michael finally whispered. Your wife wasn't supposed to be in that car. Victor froze. The ambush had been meant for him. Not Isabella. Not Daniel. Someone had changed the schedule. Someone inside the house. Someone who knew exactly where Victor would be. Michael continued. Your wife took your place by accident. Victor's voice became dangerously quiet. Who gave them the schedule? Michael looked toward the door. Ask the person who prepared your breakfast that morning. Victor felt the world tilt. Because there was only one person who had done that. His mother. But his mother had died 4 years earlier. Victor sat alone in the old dining room that night. He remembered that morning. His mother had been unusually nervous. She had asked him not to go. Then she had told Isabella to take Daniel instead. Victor suddenly remembered something else. A silver serving tray. A folded note. His mother had handed it to Isabella. Victor had never known what it contained. He searched the old family archives. At 3 in the morning, he found it. The note was gone. But the handwriting remained in an old photograph. And it matched Evelyn's. The truth was becoming clearer. Evelyn had been working for Adrian. Adrian had been working with Thomas. Thomas had been working with the rival syndicate. And the entire plan had been designed to remove Victor from power. But Daniel had survived. That had been the one mistake nobody expected. Victor returned to Clara's apartment. He found Eli asleep on the sofa. Lily was curled beside him. Clara sat nearby, crying silently. What happened? She looked up. Eli asked me something. What? He asked whether his real father loved him. Victor sat beside her. What did you tell him? The truth. And what was the truth? Clara looked at him. I told him I didn't know. Victor's eyes filled. I do. Clara understood. You know who he is. Victor nodded. He's my son. Clara looked toward the sleeping boy. I always knew he belonged to someone. You saved his life. I raised him. Victor nodded. You did. And now? Victor looked at Eli. I don't want to take him away from you. Clara began to cry. He needs you. He needs both of us. The next morning, Victor told Eli the truth. Not all at once. He sat beside him beneath the old oak tree in the garden. I knew a little boy once. Eli listened. He had your eyes. The boy smiled. Was he your son? Victor nodded. Yes. What happened to him? He disappeared. Did you find him? Victor looked directly at him. Yes. Eli went very still. Victor took out the old photograph. He placed it between them. You. Eli stared at the photograph. Then at Victor. Then at the photograph again. Something flickered behind his eyes. A red balloon. A woman's perfume. A man's hand. A car window. Rain. Then fire. Eli grabbed his head. Victor immediately reached for him. Don't force it. But the boy whispered. Mama. Victor froze. Your mother. Eli's eyes filled with tears. I remember her. He began crying. She was singing. Victor pulled him into his arms. For the first time in 7 years, he held his son. Not as a stranger. Not as a memory. As his father. But the story wasn't over. Because someone had discovered that Daniel was alive. And that person knew Victor was closing in. 3 days later, Clara disappeared. So did Lily. Victor found the apartment door open. A broken cup on the floor. And a single note. You found your son. Now give us the empire. Asterisk asterisk. Victor's face became expressionless. Marcus asked, what do we do? Victor folded the note. We give them what they want. Marcus stared. Boss? Victor looked toward the photograph of Daniel. No. He smiled coldly. We give them exactly what they think they want. The kidnapping location was an abandoned warehouse near the river. Victor arrived alone. At least that was what the kidnappers believed. Inside, Clara sat tied to a chair. Lily was beside her. Adrian stood behind them. Michael stood near the loading door. And Thomas Vale held a gun. Victor walked inside. You wanted the empire. Thomas smiled. I wanted you to understand what it feels like to lose everything. Victor looked at Clara. Then Lily. Then Adrian. You already lost. Adrian laughed. You think you're winning? Victor looked at him. No. He nodded toward the ceiling. You are. A red light blinked above them. Thomas looked up. Security cameras. Every conversation had been recorded. Every confession. Every threat. Marcus's men surrounded the building. Thomas raised his gun. Before he could fire, Victor's men disarmed him. Adrian dropped to his knees. Michael tried to run. He didn't make it 10 feet. Victor walked toward Adrian. You took 7 years from me. Adrian stared at him. I never touched your son. No. Victor's voice was cold. But you made sure I couldn't find him. Adrian began crying. I was afraid. You should have been. Victor turned away. Then stopped. Because Daniel was standing in the doorway. He had followed Marcus. The boy looked at Adrian. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Then it disappeared. Victor stepped beside him. You don't have to remember everything. Daniel nodded. I remember enough. The arrests came quickly. Thomas confessed. Michael confessed. The financial records proved the conspiracy. Evelyn's hidden files revealed the entire plan. Adrian was charged with conspiracy and kidnapping. The rival syndicate lost most of its leadership. And Victor finally learned the truth about the crash. Daniel had survived the initial attack. The attackers believed he was dead. One of them had dragged the boy into the woods. But Daniel regained consciousness beneath the oak tree. He had been found by Clara before anyone else could reach him. The rest of his life had begun there. A stranger's kindness had saved him. A mother's love had raised him. And a father's refusal to give up had eventually found him. 6 months later, the Romano estate looked different. Not because the walls had changed, because the people inside them had. Daniel still answered to Eli sometimes. He still called Clara Mom. He still called Victor Dad. And Lily insisted that nobody was allowed to change that. One evening, Victor walked into the old hallway. The photograph of Daniel at 4 still hung above the fireplace. But now there was another photograph beside it. Daniel at 11. Lily stood beneath both. She looked up. Dad? Victor smiled. Yes. Why did you keep the old picture? Victor looked at it. Because I never wanted to forget the boy I was waiting for. Lily nodded. Then she pointed at the newer photograph. And that's my brother. Victor smiled. Yes. She thought for a moment. Can we get a picture of all of us? Victor looked toward the doorway. Daniel was there. Clara beside him. And for the first time, Victor didn't see two families. He saw one. He opened his arms. Come here. They gathered together beneath the photographs. Daniel leaned against Victor. Lily squeezed between them. Clara smiled. And Victor finally understood something he had spent 7 years learning. Family was not always defined by blood. Sometimes blood gave you a beginning, but love decided who stayed. The little girl who had once pointed at an old photograph had unknowingly opened the door to a truth powerful enough to destroy an empire. And she had given a father something money could never buy. Another chance. A second beginning. A son who had come home. Victor looked down at Daniel. Do you remember anything else? Daniel smiled. One thing. What? The first thing I remember after the fire. Victor waited. Daniel took his father's hand. I remember someone telling me not to be afraid. Victor looked at Clara. She was crying. Daniel smiled at both of them. And I wasn't. For 7 years, Victor had believed his greatest failure was losing his son. He was wrong. His greatest failure had been believing that love ended when someone disappeared. Because sometimes love waits. Sometimes love searches. Sometimes love crosses years, cities, lies, and grief. And sometimes it walks through your front door disguised as a 3-year-old girl carrying a stuffed rabbit. The next morning, Victor took down the old photograph. Not because he wanted to forget. Because he no longer needed to stare at a memory and wonder where his son was. He placed the photograph beside the new one. The little boy who had disappeared. And the young man he had become. Side by side. Together. Finally home. And when Lily walked past them later that afternoon, she stopped. She looked at the 2 photographs. Then she smiled. My brother, she whispered. And this time, nobody in the house was afraid of those words.